Have you ever had someone say to you something along the lines of, come on in, the water's great? Well, the words say one thing, their tone of voice says something entirely different, and you know they're trying to coerce you into jumping into a cold body of water of some form, you know, pool or a sea or something along those lines. And this is a story about that, where I was beckoned, no, actually I was pushed into a pool that was just not all that comfortable. Only I'm not talking about a pool of water, I'm talking about a pool of emotion. Emotions are good and we need to express those, but maybe some of you are like me in that expressing outward emotion is just not that comfortable, kind of like going into a pool of water that's really, really cold. And so my story involves my daughter Laura. She was 15 at the time, 2.5 years ago, and she hadn't been feeling very well. And so over the course of 10 days, she missed a day of school, went to school for a couple of days, missed a day of school, and she just, wasn't looking that great, just not feeling well. She rested for the weekend, went to school Monday and came home just dragging, just not feeling up to her normal self. And that was about the only symptoms we had. So my wife and I talked about it Tuesday morning, agreed that, okay, let's take her to the doctor. So she was gonna see if she could get an appointment. I went to work. I get a call around 10 o'clock, I have an appointment, I'm gonna go in, get a call at noon, it says, okay, they've done some blood work. They were checking Laura for mono, and I went, oh, of course, that makes total sense. But the test came back inconclusive because the hospital or the doctor tests aren't necessarily as accurate as they would have at the hospital. So they wanted us to go to Children's Mercy Hospital. Laura was dehydrated, and so they wanted to, give her fluids. And I'm like, can't she just drink some water? Do we have to go to the hospital? But anyway, so we decided together we'd take Laura to the hospital. And it kind of was the last minute, I said, I'll meet you there. I'll leave work and I'll meet you there. So we get to the hospital, and to my surprise, they actually admitted her. And I guess I was thinking that, well, okay, I guess to administer fluids, they have to admit you to the hospital. But we're upstairs on the 5th floor. We're kind of waiting around, and my daughter Pamela, we're a close family, she heard that Laura was in the hospital, so she came down, and so my wife and Laura and Pamela and I are there. And I get a phone call. So I pick up my phone, I look at it, and it's Laura's doctor. So I step out into the hallway to take the call. Hi, this is Russ. And the doctor says, well, Mr. Rowan, I've got the blood results back, and I'm sorry to report it's not mono. I thought that'd be good. She said, I'm sorry, it's something much more serious. Your daughter has leukemia. Two hands hit you in the middle of the back at the edge of a pool. I was plunged into this emotional sea of cold words. I could hardly understand it. I was baffled. I'm in this crowded hallway, and tears start to well up in my eyes. I'm feeling really claustrophobic. I gotta get out of here. I start walking the hall, looking for some place to go to deal with this. I find this glass room, not very private, but at least it was empty. I stepped in, it's a waiting room for kids with toys in it and all that. And I ask her to say it again, and she tells me again, and we have this brief conversation. Now, I'm a head guy, everything comes out of here. I have heart, I feel deeply, but whatever happens here goes here first before it ever comes out here or shows up there. And I couldn't get into my head. It was baffling to me. We have this conversation, I don't really remember anything of the conversation. Because normally I would say, okay, doc, what do I need to know? Who do I have to talk to? What are the next steps? What's going to happen here? And none of that came to mind. I'm just hang up the phone, and I've just got this urgent news, and I know I'm supposed to do something, but I haven't got a clue what it is. So I kind of mechanically walk out of the room and just back to Laura's room, because that's the only place I know to go, and I'm just locked. I go by the nurse's station on the way to Laura's room, and I make eye contact with one of the nurses. And I must have had a pretty peculiar look on my face. I make eye contact with somebody else there at the nurse's station, and it suddenly dawns on me. You ever get that feeling that they know something that you don't know, and you really are the one who should know? And just, again, another wave washes over me of emotion of just, oh my goodness, this is surreal. I get toward the door, and I'm like, what am I going to say? What am I going to do in this situation? And I look through the doorway, the glass panel there, and fortunately my wife looks up at that moment, and I motion for her to come out, so at least Pamela and Laura in the room together. Now I'm going to pause the story there for a minute and explain, my wife is 100% heart. She's twice that in emotional expression. I mean, she She's feeling it, it's gonna be expressed, and it's great. The highs and the lows. And as she's coming to the doorway, I suddenly realize this could be a little scary. And so she comes out, and just like when, you know, you're in a trauma and somebody gets close to you, immediately another wash of emotion comes over me. I can barely speak and compose myself. And so I kind of wave her on, and we walk down the hall. Unfortunately, that same glass room is available. No one's in it. Not very private, but I take her aside and I say, well, we got the results back. It's not mine. Choking out the words, I say, our daughter has leukemia. And to my utter amazement, actually more total awe, she says, what does that mean? What do we need to do? I mean, shock, no emotional reaction whatsoever. It was like 180 degrees from her. She's completely in her head and I'm completely not. It was just very, very strange. I draw some confidence from what, you know, she's showing, and we talk a little bit and realize we got to get back to the hospital room before Laura starts to really kind of like, what's going on? So we leave the room, walk by that same nurse's station. I look at them, they look at us, and I realize that they know and I know, and nobody's talking, and we're just kind of awkward. And we get to the room, I open the door, Chris walks in, and Laura says, well, what's going on with that little bit of a concern? I walk into the room, not very well composed, and she gets that panicky voice, Dad, what's happening? What's going on? And that fear of the unknown just grips her heart, and I'm just can hardly stand it. I go to the far side of the room so my back is to Laura, try to do something and say something intelligent. I'm sure it was brilliant, but it probably wasn't either. Just then, Laura's doctor walks in. She sits down immediately at Laura's bedside and looks at us, and we give her a nod, and she gives us a nod back, and she says, well, Laura, we got your blood results back. And you have a disease called leukemia. Do you know what that is? She continues to explain it's a blood cancer, it's about your white cells going crazy, and it's made you very sick, and you're going to have to be in the hospital for a few days. Went on to explain you're going to have a port surgically installed, administer chemo. We need to do this. Laura's in the hospital 8 days that first time. They did give her a whole regime of chemo. Unfortunately, it was not successful to get her into remission. So they upped the ante and went into stronger chemo. And that also did not bring her into remission. They upped the ante again, and this was very severe, very intense. And that was able to get her into remission. That was actually 2 years ago, right about now, which we were grateful. But because it took so long to bring the leukemia into control, they highly recommended that we do a bone marrow transplant, which is a very severe treatment for a very severe disease. And that's another whole story. This story is about Laura and what was happening, but really about that emotional sea that you get thrust into sometimes in your life. Fortunately, Laura did get into remission. She's doing extremely well. The bone marrow transplant is successful, remains successful. We're really grateful for that. She is going to start her senior year at high school. She's going to graduate with honors with her class, which is just remarkable to her tremendous diligence and effort. And that sea of emotion, we learned eventually to get used to it like you do the cold water. We eventually even started to have fun in that time. Me, I'll never be the same again. And regarding those emotional expressions, you just might hear me say sometime, come on in, water's great.